You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Donald Trump and Republicans did all they could to lie about the 2020 election. Oh, we can run them all. Trump, Kevin McCarthy, they all were lying when it came to the election. Now Republicans in Georgia and other states are going to do their damnedest to actually steal the election in 2022 and 2024. This is a huge issue. But the question is, are Democrats going to have the guts to move forward with the John Lewis voting bill? They could actually do that, use their power to prevent Republicans from doing this on the state level. Joining us right now is Ari Berman. He, of course, is with Mother Jones. He is a senior reporter there, has been focusing on these issues for a long time. Ari, glad to have you in Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is critically important. Republicans can control these legislatures in these southern states. They control the governor's mansions as well. And so they control the state Supreme Court. So the only real way for Democrats to stop the steal, if you will, is if they enact the John Lewis Act on a federal level, because that is what is needed. The question is, will they have the guts to move forward and get it done immediately?
That's right, Roland. The Republicans control the states. They control places like Georgia, and they are hell-bent on trying to make it harder to vote so there isn't a repeat of 2020. So there isn't the same kind of turnout, particularly among younger voters, black voters, voters of color, that there was in 2020 in future elections. So Republicans control the states, but Democrats control Washington, meaning they have the power, finally, to put in place federal standards and federal regulations for voting. They can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to restore the Voting Rights Act, and they can pass the For the People Act, which would be the most significant democracy reform bill in a generation. Now, the only way they can do that is to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate, because these bills are not going to get 60 votes in the U.S. Senate, but they could easily get 50 votes in the U.S. Senate. Every Democrat votes for it. So that's the big question. Are they willing to get rid of the filibuster, which President Obama called a Jim Crow relic, in order to stop all of these new voter suppression laws? If they're not willing to do that, then it's going to be very, very difficult for them to fight these voter suppression laws through the state legislatures or through the courts.
So how will the federal bill, how will that protect voting rights? How will that I won't say invalidate, but how will that keep the Republicans in these southern states from stealing the election through voter suppression?
So, with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, states that have both a long but also more recent history of voting discrimination, like Georgia, would once again have to approve their voting changes with the federal government. So, the Justice Department would now have the power to block new restrictions on voting. Georgia is talking about doing things like getting rid of no excuse absentee voting, where everyone in Georgia can vote by mail, getting rid of automatic voter registration, adding new voter ID requirements. These are all things that would be discriminatory, that would violate the Voting Rights Act. And if there was teeth, once again, put in the Voting Rights Act, you could block those laws that way. There's also legislation, the For the People Act, that would set federal standards for federal elections. It wouldn't allow you to do discriminatory voter purging. It wouldn't allow you to add new voter ID laws. It wouldn't allow you to add these kind of discriminatory changes. So these bills really work hand in hand. The For the People Act would add standards that apply to all 50 states, whereas the John Lewis Voting Rights Act would target those states that are the worst offenders when it comes to voting rights, places like Georgia. And so if those federal protections are put in place, and if they're put in place soon, they would then apply to the 2020 and the 2024 elections. And Democrats would actually have power to stop these new voter suppression laws, as opposed to trying to just litigate against them after the fact, which is very, very difficult when you're dealing with very conservative courts that we have right now.
But you've got folks like West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who says under no circumstances will he consider getting rid of the filibuster.
He says that now. I think what the Democratic leadership is thinking is that if Republicans obstruct enough bills, then Joe Manchin and also Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona might reconsider. But there's a lot at stake here. First off, there's power for the Democratic Party at stake. If Republicans are allowed to pass all of these new voter suppression laws, all of these extremely gerrymandered maps, that's going to hurt the Democratic Party. That might cost them the House in 2022. That might cost them the Senate. That might cost them the presidency. So it hurts the Democratic Party, but more broadly, it hurts democracy. We saw record turnout in the 2020 election, and that's the very thing that the Republican Party feels threatened by. So if I'm Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona and I see that there's record turnout in my state, and suddenly all of these efforts are being put in place to try to roll back that kind of turnout, the same kind of turnout that helped elect me, and I'm thinking, do I want to save American democracy, or do I want to save the filibuster so that 41 Republican senators can block any legislation proposed by the Democrats? I don't think this is a very difficult call for them.
And in fact, when you talk about Sinema, she needs to be focused on this because the Supreme Court has taken up an assault on Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And so that could very well affect her state.
That's absolutely right. The Supreme Court is going to hear a case from Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema's home state, that could be make it harder to vote in that state. There's all sorts of crazy bills that have been introduced by Arizona Republicans already. They want to get rid of no excuse absentee voting in a state where 80% of the people vote by mail. They want to dramatically close a number of polling places, even while they make it harder to vote by mail. So in Maricopa County, Arizona, they want to go from having 100 vote centers in Maricopa County, where you can vote anywhere in the county, to having only 15 voting centers. That's going to directly affect someone like Kyrsten Sinema. There's another bill in Arizona that would just say that the legislature can appoint whatever electors they want in the presidential election, no matter what the voters of the state say. So this is crazy stuff for democracy, but it also threatens Kyrsten Sinema and Mark Kelly's self-interest as Democrats. They need large turnout from young voters, from voters of color, to be able to win elections. And if those things are rolled back, it's going to be bad for democracy, but it's also going to be bad for them as well. So from a purely self-interest perspective, you'd think they'd want to get rid of the filibuster. But I just think it's fundamentally undemocratic when 41 senators can block anything that's supported by a huge majority of Americans, and then that paralyzes the Congress from being able to do anything about attacks on democracy. So one anti-democratic institution, the filibuster, is then allowing you to continue all of these other anti-democratic institutions like voter suppression at the state and federal level.
But this is where, again, where for me, I've always had a problem with Democrats not having guts. Republicans have no problem changing rules to drive their agenda. Mitch McConnell can complain and bitch and moan all day about Senator Harry Reid changing the rules for these lower-level judges once. McConnell did it twice, including the Supreme Court.
That's absolutely right. I mean, that's why it was so ridiculous to hear Mitch McConnell talk about preserving the filibuster. He already got rid of the filibuster to confirm Neil Gorsuch, to confirm Amy Coney Barrett. So they have no problem. They don't care about hypocrisy. They don't care about shamelessness. All they care is exercising power. And I've said this for a long time. Democrats have to be as aggressive about fighting voter suppression as Republicans are at doing it. And they're not there yet. And the fact that the Democrats are not on board yet with getting rid of the filibuster is very, very worrisome, because democracy is at stake right now. We are seeing it play out in the states. We just had an election where a big lie was said for months that led to a violent coup at the U.S. Capitol. And now Republicans are trying to take up that big lie through other means. They're trying to accomplish through legislation what they couldn't accomplish through litigation. And Democrats need to be very, very serious about what's happening in front of them and realize that this is their moment to pass big transformative change, including a new Voting Rights Act. If they don't do it now, they might never get another chance to do it anytime soon.
And in fact, here's the other piece. If Democrats don't do this, they're going to get killed in 2022. Because here's the deal. You can't spend all this money and go out here telling people, let's get Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock in the United States Senate for us to be able to control it, and then you don't do a damn thing with it. Then you play this game of, no, let's bipartisanship, let's all get together. No, as it stands right now, it's 50-50. You can run the table on your agenda. And if the other side starts yelling and screaming, all you got to say is, I'm going to show you the hand, because y'all gave us the finger for 4 years when Trump was there. That's how you wield power. And if you don't wield power, you're going to piss off the very people who went out there and sacrificed themselves, tempted COVID, stood in line, because they're going to say, what the hell we do all that for if y'all not going to do anything with the power?
Well, that's absolutely right. In Georgia, Reverend Warnock and Jon Ossoff were very, very clear. They said over and over, send us to Congress so we can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And I think it's going to be very hard for them to go back home and say, well, we wanted to pass it, but there's this thing called the filibuster and Republicans wouldn't let us. No, you were elected to Congress with a mandate to do this. Jon Ossoff didn't have an asterisk under his tweets about a new Voting Rights Act that it could then be blocked by 41 Republican senators. So Democrats have to realize they have a mandate, and they have a mandate for big structural democratic change after an election that Republicans tried to steal. And now they're already trying to steal the next one. And if they don't deliver, democracy is going to be undermined, and it's also going to hurt them with their own voters. So I really think there's no reason for them not to do this. People are always saying, well, if you eliminate the filibuster, Republicans could come in and they could pass bad laws. Well, guess what? Republicans are going to do that anyway. If Republicans want to get rid of the filibuster, they will get rid of the filibuster. They've already gotten rid of it for Supreme Court nominations. They've already rammed things through, like tax cuts for the rich under Trump with 51 votes. So they will do whatever it takes to control power. And Democrats, when they have power, have to use it, or else democracy will suffer, and they will suffer as well.
All right, Berman, with Mother Jones, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. It's only been a couple of weeks since the inauguration, January 20th. President Biden has signed a significant number of executive orders. And you got the New York Times put an editorial out saying, oh, Biden needs to slow down on executive orders. That's stupid. It's constitutional. But what you are describing is a much more aggressive use of federal law and federal powers. And I think what oftentimes happens, Reverend Barber, in this country, when we're talking about how do we help people, we have politicians who say, it's a whole lot I can't do. It's a whole lot I just can't do. We just don't have the power. Beyond how to use Title VI, what are you also saying that the Biden administration should do to be far more aggressive to deal with race equity and to impact with existing laws on the book? You just got to be willing to use them and wield them, frankly, just as aggressively as Donald Trump and Republicans do.
Exactly. So first of all, one of the things is when we talk about racial equity, we need to be talking about first what the Civil Rights Act actually allows to be done, because it's never really been fully enforced. And that act can be used against businesses, because anybody that gets anybody that gets federal money can be held accountable. You know, back in the day, Roland, when they were trying to pass laws, they ran some things through the interstate commerce, and they said, okay, you can discriminate all you want if you can get your goods from one place to the other without using federal roads. Paid for by federal money. It's almost as though we used to think about how to get something done rather than how not to get it done. Take, for instance, we're going to talk about racial equity. We have to have a conversation about mass incarceration and police reform, but we can't stop there if we're talking about racial equity. Let me give you a point. Right now, we have this conversation about living wages, and you heard the Republicans say to Biden today, they don't know what living wages has to do with COVID relief. Really? Well, here's what it has to do, and here's what it has to do in particular as it relates to Black people. If you raise the living wage to $15 an hour right now, which is only finally doing what the March on Washington asked for, because the March on Washington wanted $2 an hour, which would be $15 an hour today. All right, if you do that, that would give 50 million people, poor and low wealth workers, it would pull them immediately out of poverty. Now, talk about racial equity. 30% of Black people would be impacted. 25% of Latino people would be immediately impacted. All right. In addition to that, we know that if you add tip workers, of which Black and brown people, especially women, because 70% of tip workers who make $2.15 plus their tips, they are low wage workers. 60% of those could not get in unemployment because the state said they didn't make enough base pay to get unemployment. But if you raise them to $15 an hour federally, then you impact a lot of people. And in addition, 6 million people who lost their jobs during COVID and were forced to go back to work. And Roland, I heard something today that'll make you just, that tip workers in restaurants, the women, were told to pull down their mask so that people would tip them more. During COVID, pull down their mask so that people would tip them more. If we raising the living wage is not just an economic issue, because you know, like I know, that systemic racism and economic injustice tie hand in hand. And this is why you need to federalize it and use the federal law. Because in Kansas, for instance, the voters voted to raise the living wage, then the state legislature came back, took it from them. In Birmingham, Alabama, the black and white poor and low wealth workers got together and the city council voted to raise the living wage, and the state legislature took it from them. And so we have to wield federal power with much more strength, which being more strategic, and we have to look at it in every area of this work. And that is where we are in this moment. We just had tens of thousands of people. We started 14 weeks tomorrow, Monday, today. And we had tip workers, we had black workers, we had white workers from West Virginia, we had SEIU, we had One Fair Wage. We're all coming together saying that we must have just COVID relief. And we must have $15 an hour now, not 5 years from now, but now. Now, on the COVID relief side, in terms of using federal power, you know, what we cannot have is negotiation with bullies, compromising with bullies. And that's all. That's what the Republicans are. They're bullies. They have proven they don't believe in compromising. But worse than that, we cannot have the people who were infected first, called back to work first, paid the lowest wages first, and died first, to now be the last ones to get relief. And the last one. And so federal power, all of it, every bit of it, has to be used in whether it's using the resolution process so that one vote gives you the majority, whether it's taking a hard relook at Title VI of Civil Rights Act and saying to folk, everywhere you're discriminating, we're going to pull your federal money if you don't straighten up and fly right. Whatever it is, federalizing $15 in a union so that state legislatures cannot unpack or cannot take away from people their living wages. Restoring the Voting Rights Act so that as these state legislatures start trying to enact now all of these racist voter suppression laws in response to the lies about voter fraud, you know, they're starting to do that now. Well, we need immediate restoration, full restoration of the Voting Rights Act and expand it so that federal law can stop them from whatever they're planning on doing. We have to have it.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
Republicans continue to introduce bills aimed at disenfranchising black voters after they showed up in record numbers to elect 2 Democratic senators in January's runoffs. Now, today, the Georgia State Senate passed legislation that would require voters to submit a driver's license number, state identification card number, or a photocopy of an approved form of identification in order to vote absentee in the state. This comes after Georgia House Republicans presented a 48-page bill calling for several changes that would limit the time frame for early voting in the state. Joining me now to discuss this further is Senator Michael Doc Rett of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. Thank you so much for joining me today, Senator. Now, let's see here. Are these bills that are being introduced here in Georgia, is this simply because Republicans lost the presidential election and the Senate race in Georgia? Is this some way retaliation?
Well, I'd like to thank you for having me on the phone. Right now, I'm in between a committee meeting, and we may have an important vote. So if I have to go, please excuse me. But to answer your question, basically, things didn't work out for them, and now they're trying to change things to try and make it better for them. Just like, for instance, the absentee vote, they used that for many years, and it worked well for them. But last year, when we used it and it was successful for us, now they want to add added requirements in order for you to absentee vote. So, yes, you have a point there.
Can we talk to, Senator, how much of a threat that these bills pose to minorities in Georgia? Because some people, I don't think, get the bigger picture here. But can you just talk to how much of a threat it is for voters in the future?
Well, it creates an extra hoop that they have to jump through, and particularly for elderly people who might have to try and find a way to get a copy of their ID or get a photo ID. So it creates an extra hoop in some cases that makes it a little more challenging for them to get out and vote.
So let's say that all of these bills that have been presented are passed. Are there, I guess, plan Bs in place for, the Black community to be well equipped to be able to get out and vote in the next election?
Oh, yes, we got plans, and we work with Fair Fight and other organizations, so we're ready to go. And I have to go and take a vote. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Senator. You're busy. We thank you so much for coming on today. Greatly appreciate it. All right, I want to throw it back to my panel now. So, guys, I want to talk to Scott first. Scott, what are your thoughts on all these bills that are being presented in Georgia to suppress minority votes, essentially?
Well, they present them under what they call race-neutral terms, but they're not race-neutral because they have a disparate impact and are narrowly tailored to discriminate and force Black people to vote in lesser numbers. We know that early voting, either by mail or drop box or absenteeism, made up 30 to 35, maybe more % of the vote and made the difference. Those ballots were counted last. They weren't counted like the day of voting. We know that the Republicans had 3 different votes, and those 3 different votes, 3 different audits of those results of the presidential election all came back fair and no fraud. And so these concerns by Republican legislatures are concerns not only raised by the president, but raised by them because they lost. They've told their constituents that, and now their constituents, now that they've created that doubt in their mind, are allegedly have these Republican legislators reacting to what they told their constituents, which was part of the big Trump lie, if you will. And so as a result, we need to be vigilant. They haven't passed both houses yet. It hasn't been signed by the governor, but as soon as it's signed by the governor, our civil rights organizations, our legal groups have got to begin challenging these laws if they become law, challenging this legislation now. The courts in North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Wisconsin, and even Georgia have been leery and weary of these types of bills and legislation that have become law and have denounced them and reversed them and struck them down. But we got to keep the pressure on, not only on the lobbying front, but on the litigation front, if it ever gets signed, if these laws ever get signed by the governors of these states.
Monique?
This is why we can't, as the Bible says, afford to be, at ease in Zion, because Georgia gets this really great, impressive victory. They literally snatched this country from the depths of despair. But the devil is always busy, and so are these GOP legislators, frankly. So what has to happen is the same energy that it took, not just from the states like Georgia, from the individual cities and regions in Georgia, but nationally, all the energy that it took in order for us to get two senators that gave us the advantage that we need in the U.S. Senate, we have to put that same backing behind what is happening now. And people, voting matters. We got to show up every time, vote from the top of the ticket all the way down to the bottom, because these things that are happening now aren't happening because of this past federal election and people who just went into office. These are state and local legislators doing what they do best. And that is a system of oppression that has been around since slavery ended. So we have to do our part nationally. We can support organizations like Black Voters Matter that are bringing the lawsuits when there are issues like this that suppress and oppress the vote. We can do our part to turn out the vote and to get elected officials out of office who desire to have their own system of control in place and don't want to acknowledge the will of the people. So those are action steps that I think we can start on right now.
Robert.
Look, I got to apologize for Georgia and my people down here. Every time you hear about us, there's something crazy going on, whether it's Vernon Jones crowd surfing or Marjorie Taylor Greene and her QAnon conspiracy. We always got something going on down here, and I'm not quite sure why. Florida used to be the crazy state, but Georgia, just kind of filtered its way up. Also, shout out some of my pastors down in Lakeland, Florida, Eddie and Paula Lake and Richard, Reverend Boss down there, because we might be coming to visit because there's too much crazy going on here. But let's understand one thing. The Republicans are not going to stop. And the reason goes far deeper than Trump or Trumpism or the 2020 election. It's the question of demographics. And that's what they are afraid of. They've been working for 20 years to outrun demographics. People who are not from Georgia do not know we used to be a blue state. And we had Democratic governors like Zell Miller and Roy Barnes. 2006, Thurber Baker and Michael Thurman won statewide. Thurber Baker got 60% of his the vote nearly in 2006 when he ran for re-election. What happened? 2010, Republicans won a majority in the House and the Senate, and they controlled reapportionment. And then they gerrymandered their way into a constitutional majority in the House and the Senate and all constitutional officers. We haven't had, until Warnock and Ossoff, we had not had a Democrat elected statewide since 2006 in the state. 14 years between those elections, and that's because gerrymandering. We're a state that is 35% African American, 15% Latino, 6% Asian, 52% women, with one of the largest LGBTQIA PK plus populations in the country, in addition to the number of transplants from around the country that come to Atlanta for the music industry and the film industry. We are a blue state masquerading as a purple state. And Republicans and Tea Partiers and MAGAs and Trumpites understand that the only way to win the fight is to change the rules. Reverend Jackson says often that when the score is public, the rules are fair, that we win. But it's only when they have a slanted playing field that are able to take over. And Georgia is a microcosm of what goes on nationally. Remember, Republicans have won the popular vote in presidential elections one time in the last 30 years. George W. Bush in 2004 won the popular vote. Before that, it was his Daddy Bush in 1988 was the last time Republicans won the popular vote. Right now, Republican senators represent about 41 million fewer people than Democratic senators do right now. And in fact, 15 Republican senators represent about 38 million people, which is less than the 2 Democratic senators that represent the state of California. So they're not trying to win on appealing to the masses in this country. They're not trying to win on being the party of the future, the party of ideas, the party of moving people forward. They are trying to win on white resentment. They're trying to win on white fear. And the best way to do this is to suppress and reduce the number of people who are able to vote. Now, on the bright side, with this legislation, my friend James Woodall, president of the state NAACP, testified on it earlier today, is more than likely unconstitutional and will be struck down. However, this is part of a suite of legislation introduced here in this state, including trying to make the Secretary of State no longer an elected position, but rather appointed by the legislature, attempts to change any changes in the rules for elections, taking that power away from the state and local election boards, investing that in the state legislature, anything that can be done to reduce the power and the strength of the black vote in this state is what is being done. So this is why that federal oversight is so necessary, because all of this has happened since the Shelby v. Holder decision in 2014. Now that we don't have pre-clearance with the Justice Department, none of this would even be legal prior to that Shelby decision. So it's important for us to fight for this on the federal level. I don't give a damn what they have to do in the Senate. I don't care if you have to bribe, beg, and steal to get that John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. It has to get passed. It is imperative for the future of the democracy, because we had a nice inauguration. It was wonderful. It was fun. We beat the Bushes and walked all over the 159 counties to win those 2 Senate races. That whole time, Republicans were plotting and scheming on how to return to power. And because of that, we cannot rest. And you can't be tired yet. It's time to continue to fight and push it through to the end. We're already on the right side of history. We're already on the right side of the issues. We're already on the right side of the poll numbers. What we have to do is now get on the right side of the law to ensure that it cannot rig the game against us.
All right. Any final comments for Monique or Scott before we move forward?
I had one. I just wanted to echo. I thank you, Robert, for bringing up just the history of Georgia, because sometimes I think people don't know their state's history. My home state, Texas, has a similar history in that we were blue, 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 blue. We are a blue state that has had a really bad 25 years. But before that, you look at the history of governors, you look at the Senate, we're the home state of Barbara Jordan. We're the home state of Lyndon B. Johnson. We're the home state of Ann Richards. And people who are either young or ignorant or both don't know the true character of their own state or territory or region. And so we end up thinking we are powerless when we are not, when we right now actually are going against type. We're going against culture. We're going against our own kind of mores and have to return to them. And I think sometimes when you do, as Robert just did, remind us of who we are, then we feel more empowered to come back to our center and stand up for ourselves.
Scott.
Georgia, nothing much to add other than let's not forget about Senator Nunn, a great defense hawk and Democrat from the state of Georgia, Democratic senator as well.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We were going to have to put pressure on whoever was in power, and so I kept saying voting is one thing. After folks are elected is another thing, and I'm telling you, the threat needs to be laid down right now, Cliff. It needs to be laid down to Chuck Schumer, to Nancy Pelosi, and every Democrat. We will drop 10,000 people a week on that Capitol, and if those folks on January 6th, I'm talking about saying, look, they go there protesting. I'm saying we're going to bring people. We ain't sitting here trying to overthrow stuff. But we're going to bring people to hit every single United States senator, go to every single one of their offices, fill the chamber up, fill the hallways up, because racial justice has to be there. And I don't give a damn about these Senate rules. I don't care about how we all getting along and all that sort of stuff. No, damn all of that. The pressure it should be real simple. COVID bill, first. John Lewis voting bill, second. George Floyd Justice Act, third. Now, after that, y'all can sit here and do what you want to do on immigration or infrastructure, but those should be the first 3 bills that the Senate and the House confronts. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. We look at what's happening in this state, how shameful and egregious the actions of Republicans are. In the state legislature, as we speak, they're doing all they can not to address cases like the Ahmaud Arbery case. What they're trying to do is literally steal future elections. Massive voter suppression laws are being passed, are actually being considered in Georgia as we speak. And various groups are doing all they can to fight these efforts. Joining us right now is someone who has been doing that. She, of course, serves in the Georgia legislature. Senator Tanya Anderson. She is with the Georgia Black Caucus. Certainly glad, Senator Anderson, to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
This is the first time I've been back in Atlanta since we spent 5 weeks here in December and January, helping Ossoff and Warnock win. And I warned everybody. I said, look, it's coming. It's coming. I can guarantee you they are going to do all they can to try to steal the election. They're going to change as many laws as they can. They are going to just, again, trying to run a roughshod over people, and that's what we're seeing. And when you talk about these laws, what you're seeing is Republicans who can't win on ideas, don't want to convince folks to vote for them. They want to steal elections. Give our viewers and listeners an understanding of the kind of evil things that they're doing there in the State House.
So again, let me say thank you for having me, Roland Martin. I just absolutely love you, and I love your show, and I love the work that you do. So I serve as the chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, which is the largest Black caucus in these United States, which means that we have almost 70 Black state representatives or state senators in the state of Georgia, which means we represent a very large group of Black people. And what happened, you saw what happened. We danced and loved your video, Show Up, John P. Key, and everybody danced and celebrated. What happened is that they lost. What's happening now is that they are upset. They are angry. They are mad. As we say, they are mad. And they are introducing laws to try to keep themselves in power, as this too is a form of a privilege that they have a right to govern. And we received emails upon email when Trump lost, and just everyday folks on the street, folks in other states emailing us 200 and 300 emails per day saying, stop the steal. The election was fraudulent, recount. And so they're upset. And one lady had the nerve to say that we're not governed, we govern. And, I thought how caring of her to say that you're not supposed to be governed, that you are to govern other people. So it's another form of privilege. It's another form of wanting to remain in power and lose and not wanting to lose their grip. But at the end of the day, we knew in Georgia that we were going to show up again for the runoff, and we had a mandate. It's been a plan, and as a matter of fact, we today in the Senate had 4 bills, and just a few of the bills will remove drop boxes. It will allow for more than one form of ID. It will require that you have to be prove that you are over 75 or disabled in order to vote absentee. Just a few of the bills that are to cripple, to stifle, to roll back that which John Lewis fought for, Congressman Lewis fought for, and Dr. King and Dr. C.T. Vivian and Joseph Black, all of our civil rights heroes fought for. And we're in 2021 trying to maintain those liberties, trying to maintain those freedoms. And it's absolutely despicable how they are pouting and believing the lies of Trump, which has rolled into creating legislation that is a lie behind the lies that they were fed. My issue is that they are creating a solution to a problem that does not exist.
And it's not just Georgia. The reality is they are doing this in Iowa, in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, going on and on and on. They don't like the fact that people actually used mail-in voting. They are trying to throw out you didn't have a signature match when you actually did. And it's ludicrous to listen to what they're saying. How can you stop it? The reality is they control the legislature. They control the governor's mansion. A little bit later, I'm going to hear from Ambassador Andrew Young, where we talked about where people are calling for senators to actually end the filibuster and to pass a very strong John Lewis Voting Act that will be able to stifle these states from the abhorrent laws that they are considering.
Absolutely. And not only will it take introducing a strong John Lewis Civil Rights Act, but it's also going to take partnerships with our Congressional Black Caucus from the state level. We have to, in Georgia, I'm almost sure we have the largest Black Caucus and we have the largest Congressional Black Caucus delegation, Georgia delegation in the Congressional Black Caucus. We also have to partner with our new president and his administration to, because what happened with our elections in Georgia, everyone says, oh, we got to do what Georgia did. We got to do what Georgia did. But what may not be obvious is that we got to this point. Now, they stole the election from Stacey Abrams, but we got to this point because of lawsuits. There were several, 3 from Fair Fight, the other 2 from other organizations. But we have to meet them where it matters and meet them where it hurts, because at the end of the day, they will continue to try to do this throughout the 50 states.
Well, you're absolutely right. It is going to be a significant battle, which is why I said it in Florida after Amendment 4 passed. Gird yourself for the battle. Same thing here, because Republicans, they are desperate. They do not want to see Stacey Abrams elected governor next year. They do not want to see Pastor Raphael Warnock reelected to a 6-year term next year as well. So they're going to try to do all they can. And so I promise that Roland Martin Unfiltered will be back in this state doing all we can to help you, the Black Caucus, and others, because, again, these are issues that affect us in a unique way. And if they are successful in Georgia, other Republicans across the country will see that and say, we can do it as well. So we certainly appreciate all the work that you're doing, Senator Anderson, and the Black Caucus of Georgia.
Thank you so much, Roland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anisha Cross, I want to go to you. Again, this is what I've always said. In the history of America, Black success has always been followed by white backlash. And the success of Black people voting in this state, in December, first of all, in January, the success of Black people voting in electing Ossoff and Warnock and awarding this state to Biden and Harris, white backlash. That's what this is. That's how they operate.
Again, hit the nail on the head. Republicans have a playbook, and the playbook is let's create fear, let's create chaos and mayhem, let's act as though voter fraud is real when the only real fraud is coming from them as they continue to try to limit access to the polls. The frustration I have here is that the writing was on the wall. Stacey Abrams, Fair Fight, several organizations on the ground, including the ACLU and others, have been doing the work, doing the work to ensure enfranchisement of African Americans, doing the work to ensure Blacks in the cities as well as in the rural areas came out to vote in droves, making sure that the suburbs were seen in large number. And this was groundwork that had been laid for over a decade. At some point, there had to be some level of inkling that things just, the winds of change might come about in the great state of Georgia. So we see this, and we see African Americans come out in droves. We see the record number. We see that turnout be amazing, not only in terms of early voting, but also in terms of mail-in voting, which they worked very hard to eradicate. And the response isn't, hey, Republican Party, let's think about what we can do to engage African Americans. Let's think about what we can do in terms of outreach. Let's think about what we can do in terms of policies that don't not only disenfranchise, but also try to keep Black folk back in the place that they think that we belong. Let's do some things that don't resemble the Confederacy. Oh no, their response is, let's keep those Negroes from going to the polls. Let's keep them from voting in general. Let's ensure these rights that they have, those rights that we have as American citizens, are eradicated and chipped away by creating these bills and pushing them at the state legislature where Republicans have the power, pushing them at the state legislature where they know that if they create these barriers, that they can totally erase many of the wins that we've seen over this past election, because they want to do this and they want to hyper speed it. They want to do this in record time because they are afraid that come midterms, this population is going to come out again. That now that Black people understand their power, that Black people understand, just how much their vote actually matters in Georgia, that they're going to continue to come out. So in order to erase all of that, it's not to run better Republican candidates and let's not be racist. It's to stop Black people from actually showing up by stopping souls to the polls, by limiting the early voting, by making it harder to actually show up, by removing some of the polling places, by doing all that they can. Voter ID laws, we're seeing this time and time again. It's not just Georgia. It's other states where Black voter turnout was strong as well. It's almost in every state, ironically, but not so much, that President Trump actually tried to challenge the vote up because Black people showed up in force. I think that this is one of those times where we're seeing American history become America's present, where the argument to sit down, shut up, make sure that Black voices aren't heard because progress has come too swiftly for a lot of white people, particularly Republicans across this country. They're uncomfortable and they don't want to be uncomfortable. And the only way to reach their comfort again is to ensure that Black people use their voice.
Mustafa, for those folks who are watching, this is also why we keep emphasizing state elections, because those who control the state legislatures are writing these rules. And there were a lot of people who voted for President Barack Obama in 2008 who did not vote in 2010. That's what allowed Republicans to cement their power controlling legislatures. All of these things go together. They're all intertwined. You can't just say, President, U.S. Senate, congressional races, I'm good. No, it's gubernatorial, it's state senator, it's state representative. They all go together.
Yeah, and that's why, it's so important for us. One, the reason everybody should be going out and getting everybody to watch this show so that you actually get educated. And that's why you also have to support the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. And you have to support the National Black Mayors and others who are insides of these halls, navigating and trying to make sure that you don't get pimped. That's the only way I know to say it, so that you don't get pimped by these sets of actions that folks are doing to literally to take power from you and from your communities and resources. And also to help you to understand the playbook that was just talked about a little bit. So, these sets of actions have been going on. In Reconstruction, they saw too many Black folks actually getting elected to state offices and others. And then they began to tighten up and to change the rules. And then the same thing in the 50s and the 60s. And then I would also say that they did the same thing when Newt Gingrich and them came in on the state level to be able to sort of entrench their power. And now we find ourselves today. So I just want to remind folks, there are two different dynamics that are going on. You have the foot soldiers. The foot soldiers are those white nationalists, who stormed the Capitol and who did those types of egregious behaviors that everybody saw. And then you have the strategists. The strategists are the folks at the Heritage Foundation. They're the Koch brothers and other individuals who are actually helping to fund, and they're also helping to write many of these laws and to support them so that they can get instituted. So if you don't understand the game, then you're going to get played. So you got to understand, we got to address the white nationalists, but you also got to address these strategists who are the ones who are putting these things in place in states across the nation to hold on to power as long as they can. We've highlighted for you before here on this show how similar these sets of actions are to what folks did in South Africa during apartheid, when they knew that the numbers were not there for them to be able to hold on to power. So then they began to play these games, both on the writing of legislation and then also holding on to power with judges and attorneys and district attorneys and all these other types of things that we have in our country that relate to the same things that happened in South Africa.
Terrence, just so people understand, you're there in Michigan. Perfect example. You've got a Democratic governor there. Republicans right now are so upset with her COVID mandates. They're withholding the spending of $2 billion in COVID funds to force her to back down. That's what Republicans do when they have an agenda. They wield power, and they are ruthless and they're gangster when it comes to that power.
Yeah, Roland, I want to make it clear that I'm actually from Michigan, but I actually since have relocated here to the D.C. area. But I'm very much aware of what's happening in the state of Michigan. And one of the things about politics and why people are so sick of it is because it's called the game of politics. Unfortunately, because I've been in this thing for quite some time, and I mean, what you'll find too is that many of these individuals are obviously in bed with each other. You know what I mean? They put on a certain look to the public just to put on a certain look. So that way it portrays that, you know, they're still down for this side or that side. But when they get off camera, you got to understand that, or what people got to understand is that some of these people are in cahoots. They're at each other's weddings. They're going to dinner. They're doing all these things, man. And so in the state of Michigan, man, I've had, like, for example, I know some of you guys mentioned to, you know, racism, for example. Racism doesn't have a side. It's the evil of a person's heart for the most part, because I have actually experienced some things in Calhoun County, Michigan myself, you know, and actually had to call some things to task. And it was not necessarily from Republicans. It was actually from Democrats. As a matter of fact, in Calhoun County in 2012, there were buttons of Obama portrayed as a monkey. And so many of us had to come out at the NACP, because I am also a former NACP president, local branch president as well. And so we had to call those people to task. But unfortunately, stuff like that happened in the state of Michigan, and in particular Calhoun County. Some of that gets brushed under the rug. So I want to make it clear that when it comes to these types of things, man, Black people have to be very careful to understand that we should always be on the side of right. You know, I look at things from if it's just or unjust. I don't actually put things in categories, if you will. And so in the state of Michigan, for example, I know the governor, she's coming under great scrutiny as well. And in some cases, she rightfully should be, because it's impacting a lot of local small business owners. For example, in the city of Detroit, you know, who's 80% Black, you got a lot of small Black-owned businesses, man, that are not being able to survive simply because of some of the mandates that she's placing on. And so my heart really goes out to those people, because we want to see those Black businesses flourish and do well. And so anyway, I just wanted to put that out there to make for sure that we're holding everybody to task, regardless of right, left, blue, red, or whatever. As a people, we're losing, man. And so we got to gain some ground and get our power back. And the power to get it back is obviously at the election box, but also electing people that have our best interest at heart in the end.
You're absolutely right about that. And what that means is that people are going to have to be engaged in this particular battle. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends, go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans Contributing $50 each for the whole year, you can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks, let's get into it. Let's talk politics. First and foremost, what is happening here in, first, what's happening in Georgia. We've spent lots of time in Georgia talking about there, and we've been emphasizing to you about Republicans and what they're trying to do. All across the country, Republicans have been putting in place, proposing significant bills that will greatly undercut voting, especially black voters. In Georgia, what they're trying to do, folks, is beyond despicable. Because of what happened with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris winning that state and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock both winning U.S. Senate seats, what they're doing, they're actually trying to get rid of voting on Sundays. They want to curtail early voting 5 days. And they're trying to change the law where if you did not vote in the general election, you can't register and vote for the runoff election. It is a number of things that they're doing and trying, folks, that makes no sense whatsoever. And so we're going to be talking about that with Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Let me introduce my panel as well. Let me know, folks, when Cliff is there. Of course, our Thursday panel every Thursday, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University. Erica Savage-Wilson hosts Savage Politics Podcast, as well as Reese Colbert, Black Women Views. And so, as I said, let's now bring in Cliff Albright into our conversation. Cliff, always glad to see you. It's crazy, Cliff, what they're doing there. And I keep telling people how dastardly it is what's going on. I mean, they are, to say they're going to get rid of, because they're scared of souls to the polls, trying to cut early voting down to 5 days. The Republicans in Georgia want to cheat in all future elections.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that's amazing about that, Roland. Good to see you. One is that, basically what they're trying to change is the system that they set up. Back in 2005, they pushed the absentee voting, and mainly because they but the reality was that it was mainly their folks that they were expecting to use it. And to a certain extent, that's been true for some of these years. But as we all know, in 2018 and definitely last year, and then just last month in this runoff elections, black voters, people of color all across the board, but especially black voters, used it to a great extent, literally shocked the world by using the vote by mail process. So now a process that they set up, they all of a sudden want to scream is fraudulent and is a fixed situation. And again, keeping in mind that this state went through not one, not two, but 3 different recounts and accounting, whatever, to double check the election. The Secretary of State repeatedly has said that there was no fraud, that this was one of the safest elections that they've ever had. He told the entire country that there was no fraud, and yet you have all of these bills that are coming out under the guise of trying to prevent voter fraud. So we know exactly what it is. It's just straight up voter suppression. It's just straight up Jim Crow. It's just straight up poll taxes and counting of jelly beans. They are shameless in the ways that they're trying to steal our votes.
And again, talking about how significant this is, they are scared to death next year of Stacey Abrams running against Brian Kemp for the race to be governor of Georgia. Also, Senator Raphael Warnock is going to be running for re-election as well. And so they are trying to rig. Donald Trump loved running his mouth. Republicans kept talking about how the election was rigged. This is actually election rigging, what they are trying to do in Georgia.
Yeah, it's election rigging, and it's being led by folks that have been rigging elections for a long time. One of the main sponsors of the largest of these bills, the omnibus bill that includes a whole bunch of these procedure and voter suppression tactics in it, is a representative called Fleming, who years ago in a very rural county, right? And we say this all the time, that when we don't deal with voter suppression in rural areas that happens in the darkness, it's only a matter of time before it expands like bacteria, right? Or like a virus. And so this Fleming person literally was trying to steal votes in rural Hancock County, right? Trying to get people kicked off the voter rolls, right? Trying to investigate voters. And now this is the person that's leading the attack on the statewide voter suppression that's taking place. So again, these are folks that, they've been at this for a long time, but now with the emphasis of the big lie, right, the national big lie, and again, in spite of the fact that we know that there's no fraud taking place in these elections, these are the folks that are attacking our right to vote right here in this state. And again, it just really emphasizes why we critically, urgently, we need H.R. 1 and H.R. 4 at the federal level, the restoration of strengthening of the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need these acts passed, not tomorrow, not next week. We need them passed yesterday, because that is one of the main ways that we're going to have to have a tool in order to fight against what's taking place, not just in Georgia, but all across the country. As you know, there were 200, it's estimated, I think the Brennan Center estimated that there's 253 bills that have been introduced in 43 states across the country.
Not only that, one of the things they want to do, they want to only allow absentee balloting for folks 75 or older.
That's right. I mean, limiting the absentee to 75 and older, getting rid of no excuse, requiring multiple hard copies of your photo ID. There's even versions talking about, just like they have in Alabama, where you might have to have an affidavit or a witness signature or something to that effect. All of these things, I mean, the range of tactics that they are using, again, is really just shameless. They're not even trying to really hide that it's voter suppression. They're not even really trying to hide. And they've been caught on video in the past. I think it was the speaker, the Republican Speaker of the House, I believe, who was caught saying that if we continue to do this, vote by mail and expanding this voting, that Republicans will never be able to win another election. So they've been very honest about what it is that they're trying to do. The question is, what are we going to do to stop them, both in terms of stopping them in the legislature, stopping them in the courts? As you know, Roland, we're not afraid of suing the state of Georgia. So stopping them in the courts. But again, at the federal level, we have got to have action on these federal bills that are pending in Congress right now. That's why our folks risk their lives in this election cycle to take control of the Senate and to be able to take control of Congress, so that we can pass bold action in order to protect our voting rights and all the other major issues that we care deeply about.
Speaking of that, when you talk about taking that bold action, that also means forcing these Democrats, they're going to have to actually get rid of the filibuster. And so what are you, LaTosha Brown and others doing? Because, look, this is what I keep saying. This action has to be taken this year. After this COVID bill, the John Lewis Act should be the next bill. And if that means bringing hundreds of thousands of people to Washington, D.C., dropping them on the Capitol, going door to door, putting pressure on Joe Manchin, on Kristen Sinema, Dianne Feinstein, and others, it has to happen, because if the federal bill is not passed, they can kiss the majority, they can kiss the control away. And you tweeted this the other day, look, we can't make no argument to somebody who didn't vote as to why they should vote if they didn't use the power when they had it.
That's right. And not only to you can't make that argument to somebody who didn't vote, but even folks who did vote, right? Some first-time voters, some folks that went skeptically to vote, right? I've seen responses to a tweet thread that I did yesterday, where people are giving their personal testimonies of how they helped mobilize younger voters, first-time voters, new voters, skeptical voters, right? Who weren't really feeling the process, but they got them to come out. But now those folks are looking at the process and saying, wait a minute, what's going on? We did all this, we got them power in Congress, and now we gotta rely on a parliamentarian. Like that's something that we never had to say when we was going out there mobilizing voters during this past election cycle. That if you go out here, if you risk your life in the midst of COVID, right, if you put everything on the line, what you are going to win is you're going to win the right to have the parliamentarian decide our future, or you're going to win the right to have Manchin and Sinema to decide our futures. That's not what we were telling folks, and that can't be what the reality is. And so to your question, we've got to mobilize our folks in all of our states to reach out to their representatives, to put pressure on their congressional leadership, that includes Schumer, in order to deal with these folks that are causing us to not be able to squash the filibuster, right? But to also put pressure on the Biden administration. It's not acceptable that they're looking at the antics of a Manchin and a Sinema, and I call them Manchinema, right? Because they're linked like that. But it's not acceptable that the Biden administration is going to just look at these two folks and allow them to dictate the agenda and not use the tools that they have at their disposal to get these people to act right. At the end of the day, Joe Biden's been in the Senate or in the White House for 47 years. If he ain't learned enough tactics by this point, right? If he didn't learn enough of LBJ tactics at this point to figure out how to count some votes and twist some arms and get some stuff done, then we may have just put the wrong dude in there. Now, I'm not saying he's worse than the person that was there, clearly, but at the end of the day, we have got to pressure him to use every tool he's got at his disposal in order to get these folks to act right, squash the filibuster, and move on this agenda.
And just for anybody to understand, we were very clear. We were going to have to put pressure on whoever was in power. And so I kept saying, voting is one thing. After folks are elected is another thing. And I'm telling you, the threat needs to be laid down right now, Cliff. It needs to be laid down to Chuck Schumer, to Nancy Pelosi, and every Democrat. We will drop 10,000 people a week on that Capitol. And if those folks on January 6th, I'm talking about saying, look, they go there protesting. I'm saying we're going to bring people. We ain't sitting here trying to overthrow stuff. But we're going to bring people to hit every single United States senator, go to every single one of their offices, fill the chamber up, fill the hallways up, because racial justice has to be there. And I don't give a damn about these Senate rules. I don't care about how we all getting along and all that sort of stuff. No, damn all of that. The pressure it should be real simple. COVID bill, first. John Lewis voting bill, second. George Floyd Justice Act, third. Now, after that, y'all can sit here and do what you want to do on immigration or infrastructure, but those should be the first three bills that the Senate and the House confronts.
Those should be the three bills. That's got to be the demand. And the other part of the demand is that to whatever extent he has executive authority to move on some of these things, that he needs to be moving on. For example, even before the HR 1 and HR 4 are passed, the Voting Rights Acts are passed, they can be doing something at the executive level, right? They can be joining in on some of the existing lawsuits that are already floating through the system. Like, they can be given support to fight against some of these voter suppression tactics. There's executive action that they can use even while we're trying to get those things passed. But your point is absolutely correct, that they have got to prioritize these issues, and not just because it's important to us, but at the end of the day, even if it was just out of their own self-interest, right? Even if it's just out of their own desire to maintain power, what they've got to understand, if they don't act immediately on these voting rights bills, then 2022 can be a wrap, not because of anything that Black Voters Matter does or Fair Fight does or doesn't or anything like that, just because that if they allow this whole slate of bills that is going through these key states, if they allow this to happen, it is going to be incredibly difficult to continue to do what we did last year and what we've been doing. So even if it's just out of a sense of preservation, they need to take action on these issues that we are demanding that they take action on, and that we motivated and mobilize people on throughout the election campaign.
And let's be real clear. Okay, let's just be real clear here. Republicans, we see what they doing. 42 states in America, 42 states, they are proposing voter suppression bills. They wield power. When they have the majority in the House and the Senate and the governor's match on the state level, they say, we're going to sit here and run a train on y'all. And I'm using that language for a reason. That's what they're sitting here doing, Cliff. And Democrats, oh no, we're going to sit here and maintain our congenial rules because, what's going to happen if we're not in power, they're in power. Guess what? They're going to do it like they did with Amy Coney Barrett. So either you use the power when you have it, or you're going to lose the power, and then you can't come to us to save your ass to get it back, because we're going to say, we gave it to you. We went to the polls. We did the best that we could. And let me be real clear. White America. Y'all didn't do your job in Maine, where the woman lost. In Kentucky, where McGrath lost. Where the woman lost in Iowa. All them white states, y'all didn't do your job. But guess what? We did what we were supposed to do in Georgia in order to get the doggone Senate. Latinos did what they were supposed to do in Arizona to elect Mark Kelly to get what they were supposed to do. And so now you again wants to bail you out? No, you better use this damn power or you're going to lose it in 2022.
You're exactly right. That's the deal. And when we say that, people need to be clear. It's not a matter of us as organizers or you as a journalist wishing this on the country or wishing this on Democrats, right? It's a matter of, look, we can read the tea leaves, right? Like I said earlier today, like, you don't blame the doctor for giving the diagnosis. So if I'm telling you that if you fail to move on these policies, that there's going to be consequences and repercussions, it's not because I'm gonna be the one out there that's saying that people don't vote, right? But I am telling you, just off of my experience, just as you, Roland, are telling folks off of your experience, we can see what's coming. And we can already see that if there's not movement on these issues, like you said, the Voting Rights Act, COVID, George Floyd, throw in there the increase in the minimum wage, which right now there's that whole fight over whether that's going to be included in this COVID package. But that if there's not student loan, if there's not enough movement on these issues, and there might be one or two that they lose on, right, or they can't get done, right? But if there's not enough movement on this, we are telling folks there's going to be consequences, because it is human nature that if you convince folks to vote because their vote has power, because their vote will change policies and change their lives, and then that doesn't happen, it's not rocket science to know that you are going to see a decrease in turnout. And it may not, it could be 1%, 4%, 5%, whatever. It doesn't have to be a 50% decrease, but with the razor thin margins that we see, that kind of a decrease could be disastrous. That's what we're trying to tell folks, and they have got to take bold action right now. It's not even bold action because we're talking about policies that are like remarkably popular. The COVID bill is remarkably popular. Increasing the minimum wage, remarkably popular. The voting rights is remarkably popular. So it's not even a big lift. There's just got to be the political will for them to get it done.
Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. We really appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. We talk about how do you use the power? That's what Republicans are doing right now in Georgia. What they have been doing, folks, they are absolutely targeting the issue of voter suppression. They are passing and introducing bills at a furious pace that in many ways is going to greatly change what happened in that state. Why? Because they're angry that black folks voted. They're angry that black people took advantage of various rules. So check this out. Ari Berman tweeted this here. Republicans, go to my iPad. Republicans on Georgia's Senate Ethics Committee, this is an hour ago, just voted to repeal automatic voter registration, which 5 million of the state's 7.6 million voters used to register. More egregious voter suppression in Georgia. Okay? Folks, do you see this here? Then he also tweeted this here. Georgia's Senate Ethics Committee also voted to repeal no excuse absentee voting, which 1.3 million people used in 2020, including 450,000 Republicans. Republicans trying to undo everything in state that makes it easy to vote. Do you hear that? That, folks, is so you understand. And so check this out. Ari also tweeted this here. Press releases from Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican, bragged that Georgia has gold standard trifecta of automatic voter registration, early voting, and no excuse absentee voting. He writes, Georgia Republicans have now passed bills through committees to repeal or restrict all three. If you want to understand what's going on, that explains what Republicans are doing. Now, folks, what's been happening there? Black caucus members have been leading the effort in this whole deal. They've been battling not just on voter suppression, but also on Republicans who want to use the power in the state legislature to tell local governments how they must do their jobs. One of those areas, defund the police. State Representative Rita Shannon spoke on the floor of the Georgia House. Wait till I see this video, where she lays out, okay, and just blisters Republicans for their nonsense. And I thought they were all about local control. Watch this.
In committee, it was said that this bill was to defeat calls to defund the police, which is really just black and brown communities saying that over-policing leads to more police killings and police brutality in our communities. And there are better ways for the money to be spent, and let us figure that out in our communities. Republicans know that these issues are connected, and that's the reason why you didn't want to talk about this bill yesterday, because it was the one-year anniversary of Ahmaud Arbery being killed. So you know that this stuff is connected. But let's talk about the real animus for these bills, because Georgia's not the only state that's seeing one of these bills. These bills are being filed across the country by Republicans. And I think that this is a weird PR campaign by Republicans to absolve themselves of the fact that domestic terrorists from their party went up to the Capitol on January 6th and killed and maimed police officers. Defund the police has never killed any police officers. Defund the police has never maimed any police officers. So Republicans, you can continue to run these weird PR campaigns if you want to. Democrats will continue to press for justice and to make sure that we don't see any more of the following: Eric Gardner's, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, Samuel DuBose, Freddie Gray, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rashard Brooks, Jamarian Robinson, Shalee Tilson, Tanisha Anderson, Alexia Christian, Maya Hall, Nick Thomas, and many more. I'll yield the next.
Now, folks, that's one issue we have to talk about. We're going to speak to Representative Shannon in just a moment. Also today, you had protesters in the state capitol protesting Senate Bill 531, dealing with, again, all of these voter suppression bills. Representative Park Cannon is standing with those protesters. State trooper speaking through a bullhorn. She decides to stand in front of the bullhorn. Why is this state trooper physically touching her for no reason whatsoever? Watch this.
Attention. I am Sergeant Walker with the Georgia State Patrol. You are in violation of 1611 34.1.
Go. Step aside, ma'am. Step aside. Now.
You are dispersed immediately or you will be arrested. Dispersed immediately or you will be arrested.
Representative Cannon steps in front of the bullhorn. State trooper moves her out of the way. For what reason? All the other trooper had to do was simply raise his bullhorn. She wants to blow her ears out. That's on her. She's demanding an apology from that state trooper. He's saying, I'm not going to apologize. Joining us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered is Georgia State Representative Park Cannon, as well as Georgia State Representative Renita Shannon. Glad to have both of you here. Let's deal with this, because all these things are tied together. And Representative Cannon, I'm watching the video. I don't understand the deal. You stand in front of the bullhorn. All he had to do was raise the bullhorn, go to the left or to the right. Why did that trooper think that he had the power to touch you, to physically move you out of the way? And I saw you talking to him. What was that exchange about?
They feel like they have the power because earlier today they were doing that to unarmed other people in the state capitol, specifically a Black man who was speaking up about the need to stop House Bill 531. They do it because this is what they do.
And but okay, where I come from, I'm just trying to understand where a cop has the right to touch someone, to move them out of the way. Now, if you are arresting someone, if you are ordering them to move and they refuse to do so, but to physically move you out of the way, under what right do they have to do that?
They have no right. these are the microaggressions in policing that we speak fervently against, just like on the House floor yesterday against the House bill, making it clear that they are standing in between a conversation on increasing transparency in policing and limiting transparency in policing.
What people, look, I've always warned our folks, constantly, I've warned them that when there is black success, it's always followed by white backlash. I warned folks in Florida after Amendment 4 was passed, don't think for a second Republicans are going to accept this. And what if they do? Change the law, make it difficult, saying, oh, you got to pay all your fines and fees to get your right to vote back. After November, Biden-Harris wins, then Warnock and Ossoff win. I said, y'all, it's coming. These folks are going to come after black people in a fierce way because they cannot stand losing. And that's exactly what you're seeing. Representative Shannon, when you were on the floor talking about defund the police, and I keep saying this, Republicans love talking about local control, big government, get government out of our lives. Don't tell us what to do. Now in the Georgia legislature, they want to do the exact same thing Alabama did, Mississippi did, Texas did, Missouri did. They want to be able to say, no, we're going to tell you in your cities how you should do your job, as opposed to the local leaders that voters voted. They really are saying to all those cities in Georgia with black leadership, we're going to tell y'all what the hell to do.
Absolutely. And they've had a long history of doing this. This is not the first time. I like to talk about how much nice white racism happens at the Capitol. These people want to silence black people through the legislation that they pass, and then they want to have you in the anteroom. And it's not going to work. Right after Brian Kemp was, after the election from Stacey Abrams, I led a legislator boycott to say, basically, you're not going to run these racist, homophobic, sexist campaigns and then just act like it didn't happen and you want everybody to attend your speeches. It's not going to happen. You have to call these people out because they really want to avoid full accountability for the types of legislation that they pass. And so, to your point, these defund the police bills, the governor comes down and shouts, well, in Georgia, we back the blue. That's not what happened on January 6th. And I let them know.
And on that particular point right there, which is a critical one, that all these Republicans, a cop was killed on January 6th. One had an eye gouged out. One lost 3 fingers. Several committed suicide. But you know what? They're patriots. Those were patriots, and we still stand by Donald Trump. I have been saying white fear, the changing of the demographic of this country, the changing of the look of this country is causing these white folks to say, no, we are going to try to guarantee that we are in control and holding power for as long as we can. So if they're able to gerrymander districts, voter suppression, if they're able to sit here and the crap that's happening, and why these idiot Democrats don't want to get rid of the filibuster, the Republicans, their deal is, we might be in the minority, but we want to be able to control policy in this country. And if we control the courts, anything y'all pass, we can overrule as well. So people better buckle up to understand what's really happening here. And Georgia is a ground zero for what we're talking about.
And I think the main thing that they are resisting is that, for so long, our government, and it still looks this way today, but for so long, our government has mostly been made up of the people who have been able to vote the longest, and that is white men. And so they are resisting the fact that now you have voices like myself and Representative Cannon coming in saying, hey, this stuff, it's not that this stuff is divisive. It's not that, you're upset that you're hearing new voices that were previously suppressed. We're happy to be those voices. We know what happens in our communities, and that's why I read them the names of just a few Black people who have been killed by police. We know what's happening in our communities. We know what we need, and you're not going to tell us that we don't know what's happening in our communities.
Representative Cannon, we spent about 5 weeks in Georgia. We were on the ground, going all around the state, live streaming, covering these rallies, because I told our viewers, we got to be there. It's important that we can't ignore what's happening there. Then I said, we got to continue. We got to be in these places. And so what is the pushback like? Republicans control both chambers. They control the governor's mansion. But what's the plan to fight this, to battle this? Because for them, they're just going to run roughshod and just pass these things left and right.
It's the fiscal impact. House Bill 531 will cost the state of Georgia $32 million to implement. That's not even including any of the lawsuits that will follow very soon after the governor, if he does, signs it. The rest of the voter suppression bills, there's up to 78 today, many of them 30 pages long. That newest one, all of those together, would cost our state $57 million, still minus lawsuits. So what we really are hitting home at is our state cannot afford to not invest in labor payments right now, healthcare right now for people. Real life people are going through, and we're standing in the gap. So today, yesterday, we were standing in the gap for our constituents. We'll go back on Monday and we'll go towards crossover day, which is only 2 legislative days away. And you just have to get the bills from the House to the Senate or vice versa by March 8th.
And the other thing that you should know is it's not just as this year, the result of the November election. They have been passing voter suppression bills for as long as I've been elected. I served on the Governmental Affairs Committee, which deals with election law. And my first year was 2017. Serving on that committee, there was not a year that I did not see bills come through that were meant to target Black and brown voters to make sure that voices get silenced. So they've been at this for a long time. And people like Brad Raffensperger, Gabriel Sterling, they are no heroes. These are the same people who would say that Trump is telling a big lie about fraud in the election. Yes, he is, but also before they were. Gabriel Sterling and Brad Raffensperger, they've all been a part of it, telling the lie about voter fraud. And it's all just been an attempt to suppress Black and brown voters who they knew were eventually going to show up in elections in a big way.
What are y'all calling on citizens of Georgia to do? And what do you want folks around the country to also be doing?
We are calling on we're calling on folks in Georgia to let the governor know that we don't want these bills. Let the Speaker of the House know that we don't want these bills. But more importantly, and to your earlier point, the segment that you were talking about before with removing the filibuster, we need the Biden administration to make good on the promise that they will pass some federal bill that will ensure that we can have free and fair elections across the country. We need that because you see in states like Georgia, these people are determined to make sure that Black and brown voices cannot be heard through free and fair elections. So we're asking people to reach out to their federal the people who represent them at the federal level to say this needs to be a priority. Yes, I understand you're doing COVID, and after you do COVID relief, the very next thing that has to happen is you have to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You have to pass SR1. We need some type of protection.
It's all connected. We want people to share their stories. If you voted absentee, if you voted by mail, if you voted in person, if you voted early, we need your legislator to know your stories so that they can directly address and say, you cannot attack Sunday voting. We can anecdotally say that will attack those to the polls. But what we can really also say is I have heard from 36 constituents in the past hour who said that they favored that style of voting. And in this moment, when we're still in a pandemic, we're begging people to wash their hands and to just take care and precaution, but still access their right to vote. We must meet them with the resources necessary for them to do that. So stay close to your legislator. There are 3 legislative days left for this one big bill, House Bill 531, to move from the House to the Senate. And even if that bill does not move, there are bills already moving back to the House from the Senate that have been passed, just like repealing automatic voter registration at the DMV, where we go to get our licenses renewed.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that this stuff is so racist, what they're doing, because many of the things that they are now legislating against are proposals that Republicans actually pushed. So now they are trying to say you need an excuse to vote absentee. Well, Republicans are the ones who took away having to have an excuse to vote absentee in 2005. So they were comfortable with really expanding the franchise to make sure that more people could participate in voting when it was mostly their voters, when it was mostly white voters. But now that we have shown up in the biggest way we've ever shown up in elections in Georgia, now absentee voting is filled with fraud. Now there's an issue with the drop boxes. Now there's an issue with how we vote in Georgia. Now there's all these things that need to be fixed. But nobody had any of these concerns prior to November or prior to the November election. It's clear what they're trying to do.
So where are the state's white Democrats, white progressives? Are they out there protesting? Are they at the state capitol? Are they using their voices?
They are. They're trying to. It's also very difficult right now because the Speaker of the House definitely is using COVID as a vehicle to make sure that the public does not really have a be in the Capitol and really to make their voices heard. So, I mean, these folks, they do things like move committee meetings around so that it's hard for constituents to come show up and use their voice in committee meetings. They play all kinds of tricks, and they have been for years to make sure that it's really hard for the public.
Are there any plans to do, granted, I know it's COVID, but mass rallies to show support? Of course, we were there. Like I say, all over the place, whether it was Columbus and Albany and Savannah, there in Atlanta, and other places as well. Are there plans to do demonstrations across the state, a show of force? Because, again, what people don't realize is next year, they are afraid of Stacey Abrams beating Brian Kemp. They are afraid of Pastor Raphael Warnock winning a full 6-year term. And so what I am saying to folks is, we can't simply just sit back and relax. We have to understand that they're doing this because they see the numbers. And the Republican leader in the House, I think it was in the House, said, if we allow this type of voting, Republicans will lose every election. So they're not trying to make an argument on policy. They're trying to say, how can we strip away make it impossible or difficult for folks to vote because we can win by the margins.
There are rallies. There was a rally yesterday and there was a rally earlier today, which is what led to the incident with Representative Cannon. So people are showing up to try to make their voices heard.
Over 20 statewide organizations wrote a letter when the bill was quickly changed overnight to say, stop this. Seriously, our entire state is watching you, and we will continue to mobilize our members about this issue because this is one that should be based on evidence, not on conspiracy theories that have been peddled again through legislative committee hearing and now a legislative draft. It is so critically important that everyone continue to mobilize. Right now, the state capitol in Georgia is under construction. It is COVID-19. It is a pandemic. We want people to still engage with us on the live stream committee hearings, but we know that there is a level of separation that is happening right now, which is why sometimes we go on TikTok and we tell people about the voter registration repeals because we want people to actually see what is happening. It's going to take a really big strategy to stop this bill before March 8th, but we actually believe that we can do it. Today we saw a bill got pulled from the floor because there were members who were down protesting, so they didn't have enough to vote. So it'll be interesting to see how these 2 weeks go. And if these Republicans can understand, you are attacking your own voters as well. 5 million of the 7 million registered by the DMV. Why take it away now?
We need Democrats to get tough, kill the filibuster, and pass some federal piece of legislation that protects states like Georgia and other states, because we're not the only ones who need this help and support. We need Democrats to get tough, kill the filibuster, use the power that we gave you when we all came out to vote, and pass some type of bill that will protect us to make sure that we can have free and fair elections.
Representative Cannon, Representative Shannon, we certainly appreciate it. Y'all keep swinging hard, and we'll keep covering this as well. Keep us abreast of what's going on, and whatever help we can provide, we certainly will be there for you.
Thank you, Roland, and we love your show. You are the truth.
Woo! Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.